Hey folks, welcome to today's mini booth gathering. It's good to be with you. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge that when we gather virtually or actually in this part of the world, we do so on Treaty 1 territory, and we are grateful for the privilege. These days, these pandemic days, there are a lot of things that we can't do. I'm not going to make a list. I don't think we need that list. I couldn't be exhaustive anyway because we all seem to miss different things. And also, I don't think making a list like that would be a positive experience. Another reason why I'm not going to make that list is because I don't think we need it. I think we're a little bit inclined. I seem to notice a bit of a trend toward us going on at length about the things that we can't do these days. Now, if the time we spend lamenting what we can't do is actual lament, that's one thing. If lamenting is part of grieving, and grieving is significant personal work, essential personal work in a season like this, then let's lament at length and in detail. Let's grieve with depth. Let's do the work. Let's lean right into it. But if what I'm calling lamenting is more just us whinging and complaining and going on about what we can't have, then there's probably something else we could do. Now, this is not going to be an extended screed about not complaining. I'm actually going somewhere with this, so stay with me. In particular, I'm wondering what we might choose to do that could contribute positively to our ongoing spiritual formation. I'm wondering what we could do that could help us make the most of the moment we have instead of pining for the moment that we're not in, and that could maybe move us toward what I would call a more integrated spirituality, a spirituality in which our everyday lived experiences are intertwined with the things that we might otherwise think of as spiritual and distinct from that. When it comes to things that we can do that can help us with deeply processing and integrating our ideas and our lived experiences, including those we might think of as our faith or our beliefs, history suggests that it's still pretty hard to beat going for a walk. Now, I know I've mentioned this before, and before you start to think, Tim doesn't have any new ideas, he's shot his bolt, and that's it, we can check out any time now. Just stay with me. I'm going somewhere with this, and there's a long and substantial history for this. As with many things in this part of the world, we can trace this one back to the Greeks, whose thinking continues to have such a huge influence over the way we shape our society. That whole group of Greek philosophers that kind of launched this civilization ship ideologically are called the Peripatetics. Aristotle in particular and his followers, but also Socrates and Plato, that whole gang of Greek philosophers were called by this word, the Peripatetics. Now, the word peripatetic actually means of, relating to, or given to walking. It's a word that means, those who walk. And that's what this whole group of people were called because of their inclination to stroll around while they kicked ideas about. See what I did there? Anyway, that's the Peripatetics. Now, beyond the Peripatetics, historically speaking, we get into the philosophers who lived and thought and influenced us closer to our time. Rousseau, the well-known French thinker, walked from Paris to Geneva and back twice. Now, that's a long walk, and part of the story is that he couldn't afford the stagecoach. I guess philosophizing wasn't exactly a get-rich scheme in the day, but also to good effect because one of his last unfinished works is called Reveries of a Solitary Walker, in which he considers both the big ideas that he's working with, ideas about the dignity of the person and education and so on, and also things as minute and nitty-gritty as the shape of the leaves along that route. Just this incredible integration of what we might think of as grand and lofty and so grounded, literally grounded. Nietzsche was famous for his long walks in the Alps, in particular in response to his mental health crisis and following that crisis. Kierkegaard, who was arguably a bit of a bummer, took his gloomies out for regular strolls in the streets of Copenhagen, and we could go on. It's a long and venerable list, and that's without mentioning the poets who did like to get out and about. And of course, Jesus walked. And he walked so often and so much that when he got around in some other way, when he rode a donkey or he took a boat somewhere, it was noteworthy. It actually tended to turn into some significant part of the story. Mostly, he walked. Now, he also mostly didn't walk alone. As was the practice of the day, he had around him this core group of disciples, of followers, the people who were learning his way of seeing the world, life, the universe, and everything. And they were gathered around him so that as he walked and made observations about those things, they were there to learn them. And around the disciples, there would often be another group of sort of hangers-on, people who wanted to overhear what the rabbi was saying to his followers. You can imagine maybe that was a little dusty, might have also been a little noisy, could have been some distractions. Maybe that's one of the reasons why we have more than one version of the things that Jesus said. Depends how far you want to take this. I guess the British comedy troupe Monty Python has a sketch in which Jesus says, "Blessed are the cheesemakers," which, probably wasn't what Jesus said. But anyway, on a more serious note, maybe all of that, the hurly-burly of the crowd, maybe that's why when Jesus felt like he needed more clarity about something, he still walked, but he stepped away from the crowds and he walked alone. He'd walk alone into the hills where he lived to be still, to contemplate, to pray, to listen to God, to just flat out rest sometimes. When he wanted to sort out his core spiritual values, to really get solid about what the non-negotiables were, the things that he would die for, he went for a very long walk, as the story goes, a 40 days long walk in the wilderness. And of course, at the end of his life, when he walked from this lived experience into what's beyond it, he walked alone. So he did a lot of walking. And in both circumstances, whether he walked with others or whether he was walking by himself, it's worth noting that the very physicality, the very embodied experiences of the walker are the things that make clear that whatever else the kingdom of God is about, the material world and our experiences in it and of it are embodied physical experiences, the being hot when you're walking, the being cold when you're walking, the ground under your feet, the crops around you if you're walking through that kind of an area, all those kind of things that Jesus referred to, that those things are an essential part of what Jesus was talking about when he talked about the kingdom of God. In other words, walking can make an actual way for us to consider the relationship between what we believe and what we're experiencing, to contemplate the connections between faith and life, between material and spiritual, between the sacred and, whatever else there is. There's a writer named Alex Jackson, and he talks about that connection this way, and I think this is quite beautiful. We know we're walking on sacred ground when every step we take feels like part of an unfolding ritual. Moments become laden with significance, connections, discoveries. Our lives are framed and formed by these times and places. The path, the place, and the traveler are inseparable. I cannot say where the transition into sacred territory is, or if it even exists, but if there is no boundary, then every place is sacred, and every action recognizing and respecting this is a ritual of faith. When we can feel and understand all of creation as holy, then every being and place is one, joined in a sacred and eternal community. We know when we are there. Or, to put that last sentence another way, we have to be there to know. There are some things that we can't integrate without being present to them. I think that's an important idea anytime, not least of all in a season like this. So, there's a thing that we may be able to do to encounter the world around us and its profound and sacred nature by going for a walk. I want to end this particular reflection with paying attention to a point of privilege. I'm able to go for a walk. I'm deeply grateful to be able to do so. It's through no virtue of my own. I'm able to go for a walk. Not everyone is. Some of us can't go for a walk because our bodies won't go for a walk. Some of us can't go for a walk because our circumstances make that impossible at the moment, and so on. If we can't go for a literal walk, perhaps we can take our minds, our imaginations for a stroll into a space where we're able to consider how, in the one that binds all things together, we are never truly alone. Peace to you all. Bye for now.